Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you all very much. And so now let's start our second panel session today. We're going to have a conversation with the Center for National Defense Studies, who is Mr. Francisco José Dacoba. Welcome once again. Thank you very much. It's a true pleasure to be here again. After these 2 difficult years, we've had to get back to normality. Well, now we're going to talk about, current issues related to geopolitics. And we have to talk about Ukraine. So where are we? What do you think about the effect? And what can we expect on the short and medium term? Well, the question is not a surprise at all. Well, in effect, even knowing the plan of the Russian chief of staff when they started their invasion on the 24th of February, well, after 3 months of combat, very hard times, a situation where we are now is not what Russia was expecting, because it's very bloody Ukrainian defense, and with the support of countries, especially the US, which has meant that one of the Russian forces have changed their initial plans, and they're now so ambitious today, they've changed their initial objectives, and so therefore we're currently in a situation whereby we can now, I think, rule out, apart from the uncertainty that we've just heard about earlier, we can now rule out, should we say, the 2 extreme scenarios, like a complete defeat of Ukraine. This hasn't happened, and it doesn't seem like it will happen, the full defeat, because obviously we're talking about Russia has got a nuclear power, and also now there's a big scenario which is full of uncertainty, in which maybe the fighting that we have been seeing up until today, at some point in time they will have to slow down or be less intense, even if it's just basically just because both sides are exhausted and they've had a lot of deaths, and obviously material equipment have been negatively effective, especially for Ukraine. And I'm not, the fighting will have to reduce the intensity, but it may not necessarily disappear, because this conflict stems from the year 2014. There has been fighting, and when we're looking at the Donbass region at the moment, and there's a lot of human victims, so therefore I think there's still going to be a lot of victims. But also, what has already been mentioned is we have a war which is a hybrid war, so there's a lot of disinformation, shall we say, and also there is a lot of activity in the cyberspace. We've got these cybernetic attacks and other things. Is there a space for negotiation? Well, I'm sure that at some moment in time we will have to set up a negotiation panel, but that's going to be very difficult. It's been tried in Turkey, and we've all seen the results. And it's going to be very difficult why one of the contenders considers, we're still in this particular phase, that they can have some sort of advantage if the fighting continues. An advantage that they think will give them some sort of possibility of beating the other side. It will be very difficult, because the positions of both contenders are completely different. So it's going to be very difficult to come to an agreement that is feasible and sustainable. But we're hearing a few comments and voices there that are saying that they were going to now call a diplomatic solution. And I think that at one moment in time we're going to have to resort to this diplomatic solution. But it's very difficult at the moment, because the starting points of both sides are completely different. And therefore, as I say, it's getting very difficult to manage the situation. Thank you very much. Well, continuing with the Ukraine conflict, we have read over and over again, and it says there'll be serious and profound consequences on a world level. So in your opinion, what do you think the repercussions are going to be? And how do you think all the different players are repositioning themselves? Well, to understand the position of all the different players on the world level, we have to start and look at the fact this is a new chapter in the conflict, which between the Ukraine and Russia. And obviously the international scenario was already full of pressure. If we can remember recently, we have experienced last few years, I think this was also mentioned this morning by some of the countries, they said, we have seen there's been an exchange of sanctions and trade tariffs. And obviously this has affected Spain too, an exchange also of technology. We can remember the Huawei. They have the 5.0 fractured. There was a lot of geopolitical stress that's already been seen. And also when this new chapter has seen of this confrontation, well, I think the positioning has been quite expected. In fact, there's been a certain core countries, may call it just the West, who have positioned themselves on the side of the Ukraine. They're against this invasion and they're helping the Ukraine. And the other rest of their international community are managing, or they're sort of sailing through some sort of ambiguity, maybe an intelligent ambiguity, but without offering support or justifying the Russian invasion. China hasn't done that, but of course they haven't closed off their communication channels with Russia, either trade and technology and also energy, which is why we're here today. Energy is the basis of Russian power, and this is obvious. And of course what Russia is doing as a consequence of this unexpected for them evolution of the war. And so what they have to need is to look for the or the surplus energy and gas that they had in the world. It's not going to be easy or quick because we need to build infrastructure. It's going to be very expensive because it's very expensive to build these infrastructures. So Europe on our side, and we're suffering from the direct impact of the war. And it seems that we're going to try and cut off our energy dependence from Russia. But that's not easy either, because it's not going to be either quick or cheap. The United States obviously are suffering the consequences in a very different way to us, but it's also true to say that from someone in Wisconsin in the United States, obviously the price of their fuel has gone up considerably just to fill up a tank of petrol. So obviously China, it seems that they're benefiting from friendly energy prices, and the NATO, well, it's, the summit here in Madrid will be held in a month's time, and it seems that they're getting stronger. And it gives reason to actually having a NATO at the moment. And we can see there's a lot of tension is building up. And so also Russia has now said that they are going to increase their military presence on this new frontier between NATO countries and Russia.
It will also be very interesting to follow India, which is a very important player for many reasons, and they have wonderful traditional relationships with Russia in terms of arms and energy, but they're also therefore very interested in continuing the relationship with the US and other countries from the Indian Pacific region. Also, Biden went to the region urging support, and India also needs support in this relationship with West and with the traditional rival, which is China. And then for Spain, even though in the following panel they will talk more about it, but what we need to do is to continue guaranteeing energy diversity through a multiplicity of suppliers. We need to manage in a smart way our relationships with other countries. I'm talking about Algeria and Morocco, that are also traditionally opposed to each other. And in fact, one of the two gas pipelines that came from Algeria closed down not that long ago. And we need to try and make sure we can do the most of our strategic position, our great gas infrastructure, to make sure we offer ourselves as an alternative or to improve the energy security of the whole of Europe. Okay, to finish the last third question. It's true that the media may focus so much on the Ukraine situation that they will leave aside other things that are happening in the world. What things are under the radar at the moment? Well, it is true. It's true that the Ukrainian war may not let us see the forest, we could say. And the truth is that this new war in the Ukraine comes in a world that was already with high tensions and very polarized. And therefore, the speed at which events happen means that sometimes we leave aside others, and we were saying this at breakfast too, other events that a week or a few weeks back would be in the focus, such as Afghanistan, or the way in which things are happening there, and the relevance that that will have clearly in the future. But it seems that people, are not remembering about Afghanistan. We could also talk about globalization or the problems that we had during the pandemic. There is also the situation in different scenarios. So rather than conflicts, we see in them, but there's a lot of conflictness from a financial perspective, from a technological perspective too, that I think is very relevant and concerning, because it's in silos again, from a trade perspective, but also from a technological perspective. And I don't think these silos are a good option for the future of our children or our grandchildren. And then from a geopolitical perspective, or conflicts, as you've mentioned, then we have the Indian Pacific region, which has very concerning prospects. There's a situation in Africa, where we as Spaniards, as Europeans, we need to be vested on that. We need to put our attention to them. Then there's the Middle East. We don't talk about them, they're still there. The war in Syria is still there. Yemen, Iran, nuclear Iran that we haven't managed to reach the nuclear agreement that we had in the past. And then other conflicts that are happening. Maybe the most important one will be Taiwan. The last riots there, and the statements by Biden do not give us peace of mind. So this will be a problem in the future, but I'm sure sooner rather than later there will be discussions, and I'm sure it will be included in the next editions of our book. Well, thank you very much. It was an honor to have you. Thank you very much for your reflections that allow us to understand better the situation that we're living and its consequences. And we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
A continuación vamos a ver un
Now we're going to watch a video with a message by Angela Wilkinson, which is the Secretary General of the World Energy Council.
And to everyone joining online today, hello and good morning. As the 6th Secretary General of the World Energy Council, I'm delighted to be part of today's 2022 Energy and Geostrategy event. I'd like to thank Repsol as hosts, as well as our friends at ENA Club and the Council's Spanish Member Committee for inviting me to address you this morning and to share in the celebrations of the launch of the 9th edition of the Energy and Geostrategy publication. It is a great pleasure to contribute to this year's publication. Many of the themes covered are highly relevant around the world and are echoed by the findings of our recent World Energy Pulse. The triple crisis of COVID, climate and conflict has triggered a global energy shock and cost of living crisis in all regions. Energy security is now vying with climate security for pole position. The Pulse shows that governments need to do more to tackle connected challenges in a new context of affordability and energy justice. Our humanising energy narrative provides a different narrative to people to help them understand their role in clean and just energy transitions. Involving more people, including energy users, workers and women, and diverse communities is the best way to progress successful energy transitions worldwide. Only with the support and active engagement of leaders such as yourselves can we hope to deliver better energy solutions for billions more decent lives and a healthy planet? I wish you a successful event and look forward to our continuing conversations.